This is coming from Ryan Curley. He asks, "Is Georgia's running back room in trouble?" Okay, Ryan, what do you mean as we get ready for the season to kick off here in about a month?
Yeah, something we talked about briefly a while back. But look, we know Branson Robinson not completely healthy, and at least at the beginning of fall practice, not going to be 100% participant. We know that we view this room as not being as deep as maybe some other ones in years past. Kendall Milton, the guy that's we assume to be, kind of the de facto leader of the running back room, is a guy that also doesn't stay on the field very often. A guy that gets nicked up here and there and misses a couple games. Dejan Edwards, the returning leading rusher, the one that kind of gets forgotten about in the grand scheme of all this. But your reserve running backs are all complete unknowns. Roderick Robinson, true freshman, a complete unknown. Andrew Paul, obviously coming off the ACL, and he's not 100% ready either. So your reserves are completely unknown. I do think that maybe trouble's a harsh way to put it, but this Georgia running back room is not in, I would say, good shape.
Oh, I think it's in good shape. Wait, what did you say? Did you say you don't think
I
it's
say
in?
I say it's definitely not in good shape.
Well, I'm not sure about that because you're losing Kenny McIntosh, which I think is certainly not good slash damaging. But when you look at the way that both Milton and Edwards closed the season, both with, well, it depends on the game. See, that's just the thing. I mean, Edwards went for at least 50 yards in every game but the national championship game from for the last 5 games of the season. Kendall Milton did not go for 50 in each game, but he went for 113 against LSU and 56 against Tech. They both scored. Let's just see. Well, Kendall was the one scoring the touchdowns. It's amazing Edwards doesn't score more touchdowns, just because of how there was a run of time there where he went for 3 touchdowns against Auburn, a touchdown against Vanderbilt, and then 2 touchdowns against the Gators. He had a touchdown. He had the game-winning touchdown, as you remember, against Missouri. He went for 49, 83, 49, 106 in that stretch. I think what's harder. I think what's happening in our world is it's even harder to understand that there aren't Derrick Henry's just hanging out there, or Herschel Walker's for sure. But Derrick Henry would probably be a better example because of how close he was to this day and age. I mean, Nick Chubb was the best Nick Chubb. Generally speaking, the best Nick Chubb was Nick Chubb with Sony and Todd, because he had a lot of help. But he was pretty spectacular by himself too until he got hurt. That was the
Yeah,
problem.
the best Nick Chubb was probably that 2015 spurt before he got hurt. If
I'm trying to remember.
Because
Yeah,
there was
yeah,
a
that's
little
what
bit of
I'm.
Heisman
Well,
buzz at the beginning of that season.
the 14. Remember the 14 season that
His
Nick
freshman year, and he
was.
came in.
It was him and Brendan Douglas for a couple of games, and it was just that was it.
Yeah,
That was it. Hey, make sure you're taking advantage of this awesome deal we have right now. If you order Dog Post, the site, the website, that link is down below. You get our 2025, 2023 preview included free. You also get a 20% off any item at Red Zone. Any item. They will also send you a t-shirt. Okay, a Red Zone t-shirt. This is a great example of what you can get. You're not going to get this anywhere else except at Red Zone right now. Okay, so that you could buy that. You buy Dog Post, you get the magazine free. You get 20% off any item. It can be any item at Red Zone, and they will also then send you a free T-shirt. Well, what if I bought Double Dogs already? If you sign up for the site right now and you bought Double Dogs, we will give you September for free. So take advantage now before I run out of the magazines. That Nick Chubb in 14 was amazing, particularly against Arkansas. Well, against Arkansas and Missouri was like maybe the back-to-back best single game running back performance I can remember, including Herschel. I'd have to go back and look at Herschel's number in back-to-back games. I'm sure he will prove me wrong, but that was amazing. Right now, man, it seems like they just need 50 yards from each back.
yeah. That's what would fill it in. I don't even know if it's just from a Georgia standpoint, but almost from a larger picture, it feels like there are fewer superstars
Yeah.
in college football this decade than there were in the 2010s. It felt like there were just different huge, famous superstar after superstar at different positions, not just quarterback. You look at the running backs of the 2010s, there were some really popular ones, Derrick Henry being a Heisman winner. You go through and just look at like guys like Ezekiel Elliott. Those guys were marquee college football players. I don't feel like we had that as much in the 2020s. And I think that kind of mentality and that train of thought carries over into looking at running back rooms like Georgia that has more of a committee now and doesn't have a Nick Chubb or a Sonny Michel. It's true that they probably don't have a Nick Chubb, an untapped Nick Chubb or Sonny Michel on that roster. But also in college football in general, it doesn't feel like there's many superstars.
Let me just say this about Herschel. I don't know how I forgot. Well, I do know how I forgot this. Lindsey Scott is how I forgot it. But his best 2 game performance were really in the two biggest, yeah, 2 of the biggest games in 1980. People forget the 1980 game against South Carolina and George Rogers. That was supposed to be the big game for Georgia that season, but everybody romantically remembers Florida for obvious reasons. He went for 219 against South Carolina, and then a week later, well, it might have been 2 weeks later. I think it was a week later. Went for 238 against the Gators. But that was a different time. I mean, you had first of all, linebackers weighed, not linebackers are not Roquan Smith, etc., or Jamon Dumas Johnson. I mean, Herschel wouldn't look so fast today. And then secondly, Georgia won the national championship, Ryan. You may or may not remember this, by completing 1 pass against Notre Dame. So it was a very different moment in time for running backs. And I think the discussion of Ezekiel Elliott or all of these running backs in the NFL, I think it trickles down to the college football too. The position just is not as important as it once was. And although these guys are abnormally, I mean, they're very good. It's just a very different position. I mean, because the sport is different. We're not playing the same sport.
Yeah, it's a hot button topic in the NFL right
Yeah,
now with all the contracts, and
yeah,
that bleeds down to college football. And you see the minor, maybe minor is the wrong word, but you look at the way it just affects the sport in general. It's not just college or the NFL. It is a different sport, and the passing game is a bigger part of it. And you've seen that at Georgia.
yeah.
Georgia, a team that you look at over through the years, and you think about RBU, and you think about all these offenses that were built around really good running backs, and the offense was built around their walk-on quarterback last year. But I mean, let's be real. Was it not built around what Stetson was and wasn't good at, and getting the ball to just the plethora of weapons? So, it I think that is probably the biggest point in all this. That it is a different sport. There aren't as many running backs that feel like game changers.
So I was rewatching the Oregon game last night because I had to get it off my TiVo onto my Plex system. Plex is a system where I keep all movies I own and all of Georgia's old games. And that first drive of the season, where they just dinked and dunked their way down the field, I think they ran the ball once that drive. That's what college football has become. It's the complete opposite of 1980 with, Herschel and Archie Griffith and, Tony Dorsett or Bo. I mean, there were so many good running backs back in the day. They would be neutralized because of offensive play calling and offensive structures and systems now. Nick Saban was. I was watching something, I can't remember. It's amazing how much content I consume, and yet I very rarely seem to accomplish anything. Maybe that's the problem. But Nick Saban was talking about, how great it would have been to have a real big, bulky linebacker back in the day who could just slam in there and stop the run. It's not. That's not what we do anymore. I mean, you want Roquan, you want Jamon Dumas Johnson and Smile Munden just running around with their hair on fire. I mean, the Oklahoma drill, which you may not remember from your youth, but I certainly do, and Bowling
I'm
Green,
familiar. I'm
yeah,
familiar.
stuff like
I
that.
got I'm familiar
Wow,
with the.
that's
I'm familiar.
wow. I don't want to talk about that, but those days are gone. I mean, you got to have the chicken fighters on the outside. You got to be able to really win defeating blocks from wide receivers if you're a DB. So it's just a different time. Now, I don't accept the premise that they're in trouble necessarily, because of what I said earlier, which is, you know, they quote only need 50-ish yards from each guy. And considering Milton and Edwards, I think they can string together Milton, Edwards, Robinson, and Paul. Robinson, I think, will be go ready to go by the time they play South Carolina. But that's four backs. I mean, I don't know that they'll each get 50 yards, but that's 200 yards, man. I mean, that's a lot of yardage. You can close this up though. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, it only takes one of them having a pretty solid game, or having a couple of those big impact carries or explosive carries to change what it looks like on the box score.
Because
At the end of the
Carson
day,
Beck is not filling in here. He's not going to be going for 50
Carson
yards.
Beck's not having that 60-yard run that
No,
Stetson had in the Auburn game
no.
to supplement that. It's going to be different. We're gonna see a little bit different play calling in the short passing game. You're just gonna have to. It's different personnel. But as long as they stay healthy throughout the season, this Georgia running back room is fine. But if not, I do think you start getting to that trouble territory.